that many people in Europe, not only in the United Kingdom, are aware of the formidable economic, political and social problems inherent in Stage 2 and moving to a single currency? Doesn't she think she would have a far, far better chance of getting people to talk about a sensible, cautious approach if, in addressing our colleagues in Europe, she used the moderate language of a 21st century European and not the intemperate language of a little Englander?
Will the honourable member tell me of any language, bearing in mind he was not there, which was intemperate? The people who seem to know most about this are the people who are not there and heard nothing that was said or the way in which it was done. Now, look, we have said the radio and television broadcasts are totally outside and after the finishing of the conference. We have always said that we would join the exchange rate mechanism when the time was right. In fact, that is part of our going into the European monetary system, which we have belonged to for many years and have put some of our reserves with the European monetary system and had the usual swap arrangements which that involves. The completion of the European monetary system is the exchange rate mechanism. All of that can be done by nation-states cooperating with one another. You do not need to go to any federal structure at all. The time came when most of the other countries had abolished their foreign exchange control. We had led them way, way, way ahead. Yes, I think it was we and Germany who were isolated in that we got rid of foreign exchange controls first. The others have followed. Spain has still not done so. So when they had done that, and we had judged the time was right, and I think every single figure that has come out since has indicated that we were right in the timing of joining the ERM and in the timing of reducing the interest rate. We in fact completed our obligation to go in. That does not mean that we agree with the next stage, which is a totally different definition of economic and monetary union.
Mr. Nelson.
Honourable friend agreed that the prospects for people of this country enjoying a higher standard of living and sharing in greater prosperity in the future will depend in no small part on securing a currency which is strong and which is stable, something which has dogged us in the post-war years. Is this not more likely to be achieved if we can have a common currency which rests and depends on the great economies of Western Europe, rather than relying on going it alone?
No, Mr. Speaker. I think many of my colleagues in Europe will say, both in our European Council and certainly in the Financial Council, that there's no way in which you could have a single currency until all your economies are at the same stage of development, the same stage of prosperity, in a whole Europe which had one economy right across it. So I do not think there's any possibility of that stage being reached for a very, very long time. And to take a single currency long before that has happened would be to weaken it and not strengthen it. We will have a stronger sterling with all its history, with all of the many securities denominated in sterling, the many contracts denominated in sterling. We will trade better with the great history behind sterling than we possibly could with a single currency.
Leighton.
There is no majority in this House for EMU, but is the Prime Minister aware that I attended a conference in Italy last year and an Italian minister spoke to me about EMU, and I said, what if Mrs. Thatcher opposes it? And ungallantly, he laughed out loud. And he said, oh, we've met Mrs. Thatcher many times. She squawks and makes a noise at the beginning, but always comes round and gives way in the end.
Jeffrey said.
Now, what assurances and guarantees can she give this House today that she will not give way on this issue, as she did give way on the Madrid condition about British inflation before she joined the ERM?
That's what they said, Mr. Speaker, when I was negotiating for a better budget deal for Britain. Twice they and the people in the Commission and our people in the Commission, and we had the presidency of the Commission, advised me to give way. They found out different.
Paul Cannon! Paul Cannon!
Does my right honourable friend not agree?
He's not alone, I must say to the honourable member. Mr. Cannon!
Does my right honourable friend not agree that there is very grave risk that unless the community can get its negotiating position together, that the GAP round of talks may well collapse in the next few months? And if that happens, that it will be no dry academic exercise, but will actually mean higher costs for consumers in many countries over the next few years. Does she not also agree that the community's compromise proposals which have been rejected on agriculture are in themselves ludicrously modest? And will she urge on our colleagues in the community to try and reach a solution of this, if not now, at least during the next IGC?
Well said.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I agree with my honourable friend. If we don't reach a solution in Geneva, in the Uruguay round, it will mean retaliation against us. It will mean that people's worst fears, namely that the economic community is nothing but a fortress Europe and a protectionist club, those worst fears will in fact be realised. It would not be our fault if we don't get a result from the agricultural round. It would, in fact, be the fault of France and Germany. And there are certain protectionist elements in France, as my right honourable friend knows. Even when we get our own negotiating position, and I hope we shall within a week, I hope it will be on the basis that we have been negotiating for 6 previous meetings. You still have to have negotiations done between the other proposals that we put up and all of the other countries. So there is still some tough way to go before we get a conclusion, but the important thing is that that round meets with success, important for the welfare of all our people.
Mr. Ashley!
Mr. Speaker, a single European currency means loss of control over our monetary policy. Our monetary policy has been an absolute shambles. What is the Prime Minister fussing about?
The monetary policy was at its greatest shambles when inflation under Labour reached 27%.
Richard Buddy!
My right honourable friend make it clear that if the procrastination continues about the export subsidies on surplus food by the European Community, with the result that the Uruguay round collapses and the United States then resorts to a protectionist policy in self-defense, the one country in the European Community that will suffer will be the United Kingdom.
Mr. Speaker, we, as my right honourable friend knows, try always for open trading. We also try to defend our farmers and see that they get a fair deal, because mostly the subsidies in Europe go to the smaller farmers, and by subsidising the smaller farmers, you undercut the efficiency of the larger family farms. We should do everything we can to see that the position which my honourable friend paints does not come about.
Mr. Ewan Wynne-Jones.
Does the Prime Minister not agree that her isolation at the Rome summit will seriously damage Wales's prospects of benefiting under the single market and the export and investment opportunities which will arise? Does she not also agree that Wales, on the periphery of Europe, needs to be at the heart of the decision-making process in Europe? A positive approach to Europe is what is needed, and doesn't her isolationist stance prove that Wales needs direct representation in the community's institutions?